Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of Here to Help. With us again is consumer expert Diane Lee. Diane, today we're going to talk about tickets, the tickets we buy online that go into a digital wallet. You go to a concert, the things we're looking forward to the most, and people are getting ripped off.
Yeah, Gordon, imagine being excited about going to your favorite event only to find out just days before that you no longer have the ticket because a scammer has stolen them right out of your digital wallet. This is happening, and we really want to protect people, so take a look.
Concert and football tickets transferred online without consent. That's what happened to an upstate woman who needed our help. I'm 7 News consumer anchor Diane Lee with her warning about ticket scams.
You might be the biggest Philadelphia Eagles fan ever after all this.
Tyler Jackson can laugh about it now, but when she got this email from Ticketmaster saying her Eagles football tickets transfer was accepted,
it literally took my breath away. What is this? What is going on? I didn't transfer any tickets, but it looked like I actually transferred my tickets to someone.
And it wasn't just the Eagles tickets she bought on resale. Her face value Usher tickets were also fraudulently transferred. She says when she called Ticketmaster, they promptly issued new seats for that concert. But not so for her $900 football tickets. She says she called Ticketmaster every day for more than a week up until the flight.
So we just went to Philadelphia not knowing whether we were going to the game or not.
And you still never got your tickets back?
And I still never got my tickets back. So when we got to Philadelphia, we just bought more tickets.
And how much were you out there?
Those tickets were over $1,000.
Ticketmaster, which suffered a security breach last year, says passwords were not exposed in the data incident. In a statement to 7 News, they pointed the finger at user email security, saying in part, the top ways fans can protect themselves is setting a strong and unique password that isn't used elsewhere for all accounts, especially for their personal email, which is where we often see security issues originate.
This is a famous Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium signature wall. All our artists sign, and we do have Taylor Swift.
Lindsay Draculic with the Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium, which uses Ticketmaster, says they've seen countless types of ticket scams, including ones that steal website photos and create fake pages to lure in victims.
If they're not legitimate, if something else, if they've been resold seats that we already sold, those are situations that we absolutely cannot help you with.
And you run into this frequently?
Every show, every event, at least a couple of times. So you want to make sure you protect yourself.
To make yourself less vulnerable to these types of scams, Ticketmaster recommends you hold off on moving your tickets to your Apple Wallet until about 48 hours before the event, or consider keeping them in the Ticketmaster app. Also, double-check the URL when you buy. Be careful getting tickets from social media or a third-party site, and pay with a credit card so you can dispute potential fraud. You can also purchase Event Ticket Protector. 7 News confirmed with the Alliance Partners, which oversees the ticket insurance, that it would provide coverage if a ticket is stolen.
First and 10 for the Eagles.
Meanwhile, at the Eagles game, these diehard fans bared frigid temperatures and a harsh reality.
So now we're like $2,000 in football tickets at this point. And at first the game wasn't on our side. Like, we were losing. And we were like, oh my God, this is not how this is gonna go.
It was while in Philly that Jackson says she had an idea that gave her hope.
I thought about contacting you because I knew you could help me. I knew you could help me.
I'm so glad you did. You've been
That
through a
same
lot.
day, Ticketmaster refunded both sets of Eagles tickets. And by the way, the Eagles won that game. A happy ending for all.
I'm so thankful for you, really.
Now, Ticketmaster tells me most customers who experience this fraud get confirmation that their tickets were recovered within 48 hours. But in cases where they don't, we are definitely happy to help.
Unbelievable, Diane. How mad would you? I'm going to a concert later this week, and I've paid for a hotel room, and I've taken vacation time off of work. This would actually make me crazy to lose these tickets.
Yeah, imagine she had flights out there as well. And listen, there's nothing that makes me happier when we get a resolution for people like this, but it shouldn't have to be this way. You shouldn't have to have someone in the news call an organization to get them to pay more attention to this kind of a situation. But we were really happy to be able to get her money back. The point of this story is to make sure that other people don't fall victim. And there are ways to protect yourself.
So let's break some of these down. I mean, obviously, I think that the highest profile things are going to be the biggest targets for thieves. Like I saw when you showed that wall at the historic Spartanburg Market, I saw Taylor Swift's name up there.
Right.
Those tickets were real targets for scams because they're in very high demand and the secondary market drives the price up and thieves want them. You saw the Eagles tickets were there. I bet $900. Those are worth a lot of money. No wonder people want to steal them. So does that make you more of a target to be in sort of those very high, very expensive tickets?
Absolutely. In fact, it was the Taylor Swift Eras Tour that really brought these ticket scams to light. They started happening rampantly during that time. And that's when people really understood that this kind of a thing can happen, not just for the paper tickets again, but for your actual digital wallet tickets. And what it comes down to is protecting yourself in various ways. So Ticketmaster did inform us that they believe that a lot of these hacks were occurring because the email addresses were not secure. And of course, all of your confirmation goes to your email addresses. What we also found, though, Gordon, was that your Apple ID may not be secure. So if you are someone who is using the same password for your email address as you are for your Apple ID, then you really could be putting yourself at risk. Because if they hack your email address and then you're using the same password, they can also potentially get into your Apple ID.
That explains when you said don't put them right into your Apple Wallet. So they weren't taking them off your Ticketmaster site. They weren't transferring them out of that. They were transferring them directly out of your Apple Wallet. Is that how
in her case, we believe that's how it occurred because she had loaded them into her Apple Wallet. They were there for, in one case, over a week, and then bang, just gone. I mean, can you imagine that feeling?
No, it would be heartbreaking, especially for something you've saved up for and have been planning for. So the best advice over all of these, whether it's I said Ticketmaster, but any of the secondary sites or anywhere you're buying tickets, your Apple password, change your passwords often and make them hard to crack, and maybe get that two-factor authentication on all of these things.
Definitely. Two-factor authentication, very important. I also want to, if you could, Gordon, pull up the Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium website. So they're one example, and they admitted in the story, and this really did shock me in my reporting, that they have at least several episodes of this for each show. They don't necessarily mean the digital theft, but it's tickets that people have bought and paid money for, and they're bogus. So if you go to, the buy tickets, which is at the top there in the yellow, on the left-hand side, what you're going to want to verify when you're on the right site is that it is legitimate. And the best way to do that, Gordon, is if you go to the URL and you see that little line in the circles there, press on that, and you're going to have a box opens up that tells you that now it's taken you to the Ticketmaster connection. The connection is secure. They do use cookies and data. So they'll give you all the details, but it says connection is secure.
That's the one you care about right there, the lock symbol that says connection is secure. That's
exactly. And people have also probably heard about HTTPS, and that S is important. That S also means secure. So if you see those two things, you know that you're on a secure website. The Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium, just to use that example again, says that because they have a difficult name, their name actually is crowdpleaser.com. It's not the same as what their auditorium is named. So they do get a lot of bogus sites, unfortunately, and they're trying to tackle that. But this can occur really with any venue that you go to.
It just sounds like in these cases, hackers who might have access to an email or an Apple password or a Ticketmaster password or a Memorial Auditorium password, they can lay in wait until you actually have a ticket they care about. They're not your $5 ticket, they're not going to bother to steal. But if they have your information and they know you've got a very in-demand ticket, that's when you're going to be vulnerable.
And you have to watch out for social media. There's going to be a lot of really attractive posts. Hey, you can have these tickets. And they'll even take the screenshot and send it to you of the actual ticket with the code that you would need. But nowadays, there's much more secure tickets where that code kind of changes out. So don't necessarily believe just because you've been sent that image that you think will gain you entry that it'll actually work.
All right, Diane. Secure your passwords. We're going to say this in 1,000 of these stories. And this is tickets. Your tickets can be stolen if you don't secure your password. All right, we've got another great piece of consumer advice coming up in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's take a quick break. And everybody, you are watching Here to Help. Diane Lee has got another great story for us. We just talked about how not to get your tickets stolen by scammers online. Now we're going to talk about the people who maybe have driven all of us crazy at some point in our lives. Some legitimate, some less so. But Diane, we're going to talk about debt collectors.
Yeah, serious problem for a lot of people getting calls that are harassing because they come in at odd hours or maybe they use profane language. Well, many of those times that is not legal. And what I wanted to do in this story is to help people understand their rights. Check it out.
Personal debt in the U.S. has reached an all-time high, nearly $18 trillion. I'm 7 News consumer anchor Diane Lee, and when we put out the word that we were doing a story on your rights when it comes to debt collection, we got an overwhelming response. Most have no idea that debt collectors who violate the law could end up owing you. Hard work isn't something Joshua McCraw shies away from, but when he lost his job a while back, he got behind on payments.
Ever since then, it's just hounding me every other day. It's like, hey, you owe this, you owe this.
It's tempting to let those calls go to voicemail, but experts say pick up and request they send you documentation showing the name of the creditor, what you owe, and your debt collection rights. A lot of people don't realize you can request the debt collector stop calling you. The key is to do that in writing. It doesn't erase the debt, but by law, with few exceptions, they must honor that request. That's just one of many consumer protections laid out in the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Debt collectors are not allowed to contact you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m., call you at work if you tell them not to, email, text, or private message you if asked to stop. They also can't threaten you, use profane language, call you more than 7 times in a 7-day period, or call within 7 days after talking with you by phone. Consumer attorney Andrew Hart says knowing your rights can help you stop the harassment and even force rogue collectors to pay you. Is it possible to turn the tables on creditors?
It absolutely is. The best thing you can do is keep your own records on these things. Note who calls, what time, from what telephone number, and what they're saying to you. The more information you have about what they're doing, the better chance you have of enforcing violations against them if they are committing those.
And if they did violate, what happens?
For each violation in federal court, you get up to $1,000 for each violation.
Those collectors would even have to pay your attorney fees, something they won't tell people like McCraw.
I could end up using that money that if they end up owing me, I can use it to go ahead and pay them off, so I ain't got to worry about it.
Now, since McCraw's debt is mostly tied up in credit cards, know this about that unsecured debt. The statute of limitations for a creditor to sue you is 3 years. If another creditor buys his old debt and convinces McCraw to pay just 1 dime, it reopens the door to getting sued for 3 more years.
They prey on the fact that a lot of people don't know, and that's why they abuse what they're doing in the worst ways possible.
Hart warns if you are sued, don't wait to respond.
If you get served and you don't file an answer within 30 days, then the court will automatically find against you.
Well, before it gets to that, you can find help at places like Greenville Federal Credit Union. Chief Operating Officer Brian Spinagle says they offer a free program aimed at getting clients out of debt, often by negotiating lower interest rates.
We can help save some money on your debt potentially and save on your payment and give you some education and give you a lot of tools to help you make better decisions moving forward.
McCraw is grateful for a new job and says knowing his rights will help him make right on his debt and stop the calls.
It's hard to come back on top, but there's still always light at the end of the tunnel.
Now, getting proof of the debt in writing can also help you make sure it's not a scam. Also, keep in mind, even if you no longer can be sued, not paying debt can wreck your credit score. So the best strategy is to negotiate a lower interest rate so you can pay it off faster.
Diane, wow on all of that. I have so many questions. I think all of us are going to have a lot of questions about what our rights are, what our obligations are. For instance, the gentleman in your package, the first thing I kind of need to know is, did he actually owed that money? Right?
Yeah, he did. And he rightly told me he does owe it. He understands that he owes it. He just wants to be able to pay it off without being hounded. You might remember from the package, he did lose his job. And so that's around the time that he got behind. And he has a job now. So he's trying to catch up and do the right thing. But he doesn't want to have those calls at odd hours and all of that.
And so step by step it for people here, you owe money. This is a legitimate debt that you owe, and you're getting call after call after call. Do I actually need to contact this company and say, stop calling me? Or when they call me, is it enough for me to just say, I don't want you to call me anymore? Is that as simple as it is?
Yeah, great question, Gordon. No, neither of those.
Wow,
Basically,
okay.
what you have to do, because if you say it over the phone, they can just keep calling you back. You need to submit that request in writing. So here's the step that you need to take. When they call you, you need to request what their address is, request what the name of the caller is, and say that you would like would like for them to send you proof of debt. And that means that you'll get a document in the mail with not only the address and the details that you need, but also where that debt originated. And that's to make sure too, that's very important, to make sure that you actually owe this debt, because sometimes, your phone number is attached to someone else's name and they think you owe stuff, and you might be getting these calls that are not really legitimate, and it might be a scam too. So this is all for verification, and then you can take that information and you can send them in writing a request to stop calling by saying you're making a good faith effort to pay this debt, but you would like those harassing calls to stop.
So that's really the trigger point. You mentioned $1,000 for somebody violating all this stuff. They don't hit that point for the $1,000 until they have received that written notification from you.
Right, exactly. And there's more to it with that $1,000. So you have to provide to potentially get that $1,000. You would have to provide documentation that they violated the Fair Debt Practices Act.
Some of these
here,
right?
Let's put up these. I agree, Gordon, because it's so important for our folks to know that they have rights here. And so again, debt collectors can't call you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. They can't call you at work if you tell them not to. They can't email, text, or PM you if you ask them to stop. So all of these things that you're seeing, these are what they can't do. So if you know these rights and they're still doing them and you document them, then you may have a case and you may be able to be paid $1,000 per violation, not just for all of the violations.
So is it like, literally like I'm keeping a diary at home? Like Tuesday, 2:15 p.m., they threatened me and swore at me twice. Is that $3,000? Did I make $3,000 from that?
Yes, potentially. Again, you would have to file that suit, but yes. And you wouldn't have to pay your attorney because they would pay your attorney's fees. But this is very important. It doesn't just come because they call you. You have to pick up and talk to them and have documentation.
So if they called me 17 times today, but I sent all 17 to voicemail, that's not a violation. I actually have to pick up the phone and speak to them.
Right. And that's one of the big messages of the story, because people do get 17 calls a day and they don't pick up because they see the number. In order to make those stop, you actually do have to pick up. That's when the rules kick in. So once you pick up, they're not allowed to call you multiple times within a day. There's certain rules on that. A certain number of times is what they can call you within a week. So
I think 7 is what we got over here. Yes,
right.
7 times, 7 days. But I guess the other question people are going to have about this, businesses are entitled to legitimately collect money that you actually do owe. It's not like you can just say, stop calling me, and you've solved the problem. You haven't made anything go away at that point.
Right, absolutely. And this story is not intended to let people know, hey, they can get off the hook and they can get money from debt collectors. It's so that they know their rights while they're paying off. But there is one really important scenario here that I addressed in my story, and I want to go into a little bit more, and that's credit card debt. Because credit card debt does roll off after 3 years, which means if you've reached that statute of limitations, you would no longer owe that debt. But what debt collectors who buy that debt will do is they want to restart those 3 years so that they can legitimately call you for that debt and hound you for it.
So you think you're negotiating a better deal. They say, hey, just send me $10. You send them $10 and now 3 years has restarted.
Exactly. And they make it sound attractive, Gordon, as you mentioned. They'll say, you know what, we'll reduce that interest rate. You're only going to owe a small amount. But once you make that payment, then the statute of limitations starts all over again.
Oh, good grief. I do want to drill down on that one more level here. So if I racked up $1,000 in credit card debt, I ignore it, I don't make any more purchases, and I have not made any payments in 3 years, that just goes away?
It goes away except for one key point, which I made at the end of my story. Your credit rating is going to tank. And you don't want that, because then it's going to be more difficult to buy a house, and specifically for a lot of folks, a car. And we all need cars for jobs. So when you go to buy your next car, you're either not going to get a loan or you're going to get a ridiculously high interest rate on your loan. And that's a whole nother story, Gordon.
There have been in the past employers who will even check your credit rating when you apply for a job or apply to rent an apartment, all kinds of situations where that could backfire on you. Okay, you also mentioned going to a bank. Actually, I think you went to a credit union in your story, and they consolidated that debt. I think what they're really doing there is they're selling you a loan, right? A better rate, but a loan.
Right, exactly. But the reason why I chose the Federal Credit Union, again, there's many federal credit unions, but what they usually share in common is that they are very focused on the consumer in terms of helping to educate them and get them out of debt. And so, yes, they are selling you a loan, but the loan is at a much lower interest rate. They're showing you how you can consolidate, and then they're educating you about budgeting. And so it's kind of this holistic approach that they can give that really can leave people in a much, much better situation. They're also a little bit more forgiving. Sometimes they'll work with you if you have a few, late situations where they won't necessarily charge late payments if that happens every once in a while. So their motto is really to help people in these situations.
And then finally, there are companies, I've seen a lot of advertisements for it, that will do that same thing. They are charging a fee for it, but they will advertise, hey, we can get your debt reduced, we can get your payments reduced, we can save you money. Are those legit, and should I use them?
Yeah, you're going to see that on TV and hear it on the radio, and I'm really glad you brought this up. I would definitely hesitate to say that they're not legit. Many of these companies are legitimate, but it's akin to if you have a situation where, you are paying for a service that you really don't need to pay for because other organizations like the Federal Credit Union can help you do that for free. The other thing I caution you is that there are some that truly are not legitimate, and they will have this, this great plan where, hey, you just send us your payments and we're going to handle this. And then you send your payments to them. I'm glad you said, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then they don't pay. So, and then you wind up, who knows, in foreclosure or whatever the situation. So.
We get a weird number of those in the newsroom. Sometimes people calling, trying to collect debts from phantom debts. And you can kind of tell because they violate some of these rules, like they'll use the profane language and they make threats, which is illegal.
Yeah, we do get a lot of calls in the newsroom, and I'd be curious, what do you say to them, Gordon?
It's nothing but nice things. Maybe I break some of those rules sometimes, actually, but I never call them. So, okay. So the bottom line for people, because again, when I was younger, I ran up credit card debt, and the APR on your credit card debt can be so high that you're just making the minimum payments every day, and you're almost never escaping that debt. So I have gone and gotten a consolidation loan, and that's the only way I got out of this mess. But when you reach that stage of debt collection, know your rights, get it in writing, and then try your best to find a way to consolidate, to pay off, to reduce?
Right. Know that there's help out there and seek that help, because one thing you need to keep in mind is that these creditors, they want their principal back and they do want some interest back. But if they've charged a high interest rate, there might be wiggle room from negotiation. I know that the Federal Credit Union that I spoke with actually works with the creditors to try to negotiate some of that debt down from time to time. And not the principal, but just the interest rate. So, there is help out there. So don't be concerned about seeking out help at the same time as, like you said, Gordon, absolutely knowing your rights in case these debt collectors who are calling are violating them.
Take notes, write things down, write down dates and times. All right, Diane, once again, great advice for everybody to deal with debt collectors, the ones who maybe are ethical and the ones who are less ethical, and how to take control of your finances. We've got a lot of other great money saving and self-protection ideas here to help. We're back with another episode very soon. Thanks for joining us, everybody.